Hello, welcome back to the Life's Good. My name's AJ, I live in the northeast of England. This is my channel. And you've just caught me putting some bits and pieces onto the soil on our vegetable plot. This area of my plot is actually quite heavy with clay, and it keeps coming to the surface in lumps, most of which are small, but every now and again you get a big lump and then it gets baked in the sun and it's hard, nothing grows in it, and it's a bit of a nuisance. But what I do, this soil, or this bed rather, is a no-dig bed. I've explained that before. We do employ the no-dig method on my vegetable plot, and I keep adding all manner of materials to the surface of the soil. So compost, manure, soil from the chickens run. At the moment what I'm doing is I'm emptying a lot of containers that had flowers in last summer and into the fall, and they're all spent. So I'm removing all the dead foliage and plants and bits and pieces. They're all going to the compost heap, compost bin. And what's left in the pots, I'm just tipping out onto this soil. As simple as that. It doesn't matter if you get a few fibrous roots and bits. There's a piece there that's come out. I just break it down with the rake, just spread it about, and the roots dry out. It all gets dragged into the soil by the worms and so on, and even the birds come down and scratch around amongst it. Wild birds and pigeons come down, they scratch us about, have a look for bugs and grubs. But all this going into the soil helps to improve it. Now, something worth noting here is everything you put in the ground here, all your composts and your mulches and everything you put onto the soil, you're feeding the soil. A lot of people seem to think, or I've heard people mention the fact that they're feeding the plants, they're putting food in the ground for the plants. That's not the case. You're actually feeding the soil. The plants grow in the soil and will extract from the soil the nutrients that they need. So by putting all these mulches and manures and all that other material on the soil, you're feeding the soil. That's what my father used to tell me, at any rate. So everything you put in is good for the soil and for the balance of nutrients and minerals and so on in the ground that the plants can access and extract for their benefit. The most of this plot is actually very, very good. It's just this one corner I find very heavy with clay underneath, and it does work its way up. So I'm putting lots and lots of extra toppings here, and indeed at the moment the old pots and containers are being tipped in here. When I grow potatoes in containers, I put all that soil back on the plot. I've used containers to grow runner beans in last year. All that goes on the plot. All the spent compost from whatever I've done in and around our garden goes on this soil. I spread it about as far as I can, and it all gets taken in by the worms and the bugs and the grubs and the weather, and helps to improve the soil. Now, if you remember, I had garlic in this little area. I grew it last year. It didn't seem to do very well, and I actually left it in the ground until now, today. What I found was a lot of them had lots of shoots coming out, 4, 5, 6 or more shoots from each of the individual plants that I had in here. So I've lifted them and had a look. Now the cloves at the bottom were very, very small, fairly underdeveloped, and what I've done is I've separated them into all the individual cloves, and I've taken the largest of those and replanted them along the edge of this path. I'll just lift you down and show you closer what I've done down here. Well, as you can see, I've got a nice row there of green stems showing. There's a lot more stem and leaf on them this year than there were last year, so I'm hoping that splitting them into individual cloves and planting them out as I have will give us the chance to get a reasonable crop of garlic this year from each of these. I'll keep you posted on what's going on, and obviously later in the season when we come to lift these, we'll have a look and see what sort of results we've got. Looking back across the plot to where I was a moment ago, you can see the garlic adjacent to the pathway there. That little area, that part of the vegetable plot there, is where I grew my shallots last year. They were fairly successful. I've got some more to plant out today. However, I'm not going to put them in the same place. Now, I don't employ a strict crop rotation on this plot. As I said, it's the no-dig method of gardening. And we try to move things around so that we don't grow the same thing in the same area more than once. So I'm going to choose a location for the shallots that's not where they were last year. And I've already considered putting them down the bottom end here. So I've got a row of broad beans in there next to the pathway there, and indeed on this side here on the right. And in between the two at the bottom end, just down there, I'm going to put out my shallots in a moment. I've got my shallots in this tray. I tip them out of the little sort of mesh bag that they're in. And you go through them and check that they're all okay and suitable for using. Now there's one there that's basically just skin. There's no body to it at all. I won't be planting that. That's not suitable. I noted that this one here is also, it's a bit spongy and a bit green. So that could also be sort of rotting off. It may not be suitable for growing. But some of these other ones, the larger ones here for example, they're very firm, golden yellow, and those are perfect for planting out. And it's also worth noting that there is a top and a bottom to these. The bottom is quite flat and has fibrous roots coming out, and the top has like a sort of a pointed, sort of tapered skin protruding at the top there. My father used to call that the fuse, or indeed my brother and I used to call it the fuse. Looked like a miniature bomb. But yeah, so the fuse part is at the top and the flat section with the roots at the bottom. And you plant these quite simply by pressing them into the surface of the soil. It's nothing difficult at all in the surface, and you want to plant them about 8 inches apart. They will form lots of individual shallots. So you plant one, it splits as it grows and forms 4, 5, even more new shallots around it. So you need to give it room to do that, and obviously to have its foliage. So I find just popping them in the ground about 8 inches, 10 inches apart, something like that, is absolutely fine. So I'm going to pop these in the ground this afternoon. Well, planting shallots couldn't be easier. You take your shallot. I sometimes remove some of these outer skins if there's a lot of loose skin on here. I just take that off. And you find your spot where you're going to plant it. Now remember, I've got broad beans planted up here where this stick is. So I come away from those about 4 inches from this wall. I'll put the first one in about there, roots down, and push it into the soil with just the top showing there. And that's all you need to do. I'll do the next one. Take off the loose bits. About 8 inches or so away, 10 inches, something like that. And push it into the soil with just the top protruding. So easy. A point to note here is that birds are a bit of a problem with your shallots. They will come along, they'll see these bits sticking up, and they will peck at them. The pigeons and the jackdaws, magpies, even blackbirds and other birds will peck at these and they'll lift them out of the ground. So if you plant them all out today and come back tomorrow and they're all lying on the surface, you'll know who the culprit is. Don't blame the wife, don't blame the kids, it's the birds. So just be cautious that they may get lifted by the birds, so you need to check that they're still in the ground. Another one, about 8 inches away, into the ground, push it into the soil surface, and just leave the top section with the tip protruding. just like that. I've planted all of my shallots, and as you can see, I've got a couple of CDs hanging up as a bird scarer, and I've also put some chicken wire over the top which stops the pigeons and other birds scratching around and lifting these little bulbs out of the ground. So, thanks for watching. If it's your first time here, please hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the bell for future notifications. You know the drill. And we'd love to have you back here in the Life's Good. So whatever you're doing, you look after each other. You be happy, you be safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.